every step of the process than Dave. He's blended his own oil in Spain. He has championed high-quality olive oil for the last 15 plus years in America. He won the James Beard Foundation Award for Best Chef in New York City in 2005. And in addition to being an amazing chef, he's also an avid fisherman, professional fisherman, who actually he's going to have a 6-part series on television on the World Fishing Network. Fishing all over. And
every fisherman's dream, man, somebody to pay for it.
Where you go out right up in the harbor? Okay.
I fish, yeah, I basically fish from the Barons Island Bridge, Fire Island Inlet. It's kind of like my realm. It's been pretty good the last few years.
Yeah.
Last year was actually quite epic because we had humpback whales.
Oh, wow.
And we had a pod of 20, 30 humpback whales that stayed here the whole summer.
Wow.
And, 20 feet of water off of Reese Park, it was pretty amazing watching them jumping, rolling, feeding. You don't get that many opportunities with the World Trade Center in your background,
Yeah. You seen black sea bass as far as north?
Oh, yeah, we catch
Yeah.
a lot. A lot. So, but anyway, so today I guess we're going to talk about olive oil with seafood. And as Nick said, I've obviously championed olive oil. I cooked French food for 17 years, so I was a master of butter and cream. And then I decided one day that butter and cream was going to be a thing of the past, and it has become a thing of the past. And now people are starting to champion olive oil, and they produce it in many countries and different qualities, and all over the world. And good oil, it's like wine. I always tell people, if you like it, drink it. What's the difference? If you think it's good to you. It's really all that matters. But obviously, everybody here knows a lot about olive oil, and there is a significant difference between good oil and just regular oil. And it's kind of like wine. It's meant to be eaten with food. Nick knows I produced my own oil in Zaragoza in Spain with a very interesting group of young, progressive farmers, a company called Frutiera, which the main business is stone fruits. They're the largest grower of stone fruits in all Spain. And I have some olive groves. And 2 years ago, when we went to do the coupage and we went to blend the oil, they always did it on their own, and they never really had anybody else come. And they said, all right, we're going to blend the oil. And I said, where's the food? And they said, food? And I was like, yeah, well, you got to taste it with different things, So we went to the market and bought the food. I don't know, any people been to the mills? There's a smell that you never forget when you're in the mill. It's irreplaceable. You get that smell in your nose once in your life, and you'll never ever forget it, But they do very kind of like almost like the Italians, very high tech equipment, cutting edge at the moment, and they produce it's a blend of Arbequina, Picual, and another olive, Chiquitita, which is an olive that they produced by themselves, so it's a hybrid. Very interesting olive. By itself, it's not that good, but when it's blended into other things, it makes the oil a lot more complex. Because the Arbequina is very aromatic. And the other two olives really add the flavor to the oil and make it much more interesting. There's some interesting stuff going on, all over the world with olive. People, they use it. It's become cutting edge. Some people say, I invented crude oil. I didn't invent crude oil. I basically brought it to the United States, but now you can go, I go to Cleveland and people have it on the menu. And, 10 years ago, very few people were, people using olive oil, Jean-Louis Paladin, people like that, but it was pretty limited. And today you can go to, any supermarket, any gourmet store, they have 25 varieties. not necessarily 25 good varieties, but they, you know, they do have 25 varieties. But you know, like fish is just, it's like anything else. You want to put, I use an expression, you want to put the thing with the thing. You know, you don't want to serve a really spicy oil with like a delicate, you know, snapper. You don't want to serve an oil that has no characteristics. You know, where fish that's going to be aggressively, you know, in your face, whether it's mackerel, it's a piece of bluefin tuna, a piece of machi. But for me, still the best way to taste oil is with raw fish. You know, I had on Friday night, I had Mr. Takanaka, right, who's he owns a company called Third Generation Fish, and they've been around a very long time. And he's in the Fulton Fish Market. And he was a little skeptical coming to the restaurant, you know, gonna eat raw fish, very traditional Japanese guy. And you know, I served him some of his fish and some fish that I didn't buy from him because I do a lot of business with him. And when he was done, I looked at him, I said, you know, so Tony, how was the thing? He goes, that was very interesting. Which meant that it was good. You know, because they don't give a lot of information. So he's used to eating, you know, raw fish one way. You know, either sashimi or sushi. You know, either rice, but not a whole lot of, you know, interesting condiments necessarily. You know, his main business, he's one of the largest sellers of tuna by far on the East Coast, maybe if not in the United States. So, you know, he spends a lot of time in Skiji and so on and so on. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do two different fish. Right? One is a local fish, which is coming out of the local waters right now, which is fluke. Right? And the other fish we're going to do is Spanish mackerel. We're going to present them with two different oils, two different preparations, and you know, we'll be able to make some judgments. You know.
Is fluke the same as flounder?
Flounder is this two basic differences. So flounder is a winter flatfish. Typically, like for me as a fisherman, opening day is always on St. Patrick's Day, right? So that's the first day of flounder season. And a fluke is a summer flounder, right? A flounder has no teeth. He only has lips, right? Typically, like a big flounder, we call it a horseshoe flounder, you know, will be like 3 pounds, maybe 4 pounds. And then there's a couple of different varieties. Like the indigenous one is what we call blackback flounder, where it's white on one side and it's a darker brownish black color on the top. That's the most indigenous flounder to me from Long Island. And then you have yellowtail, you have gray sole, and then fluke typically is in the summertime. But this time of year they catch a lot of them by the squid fishing. So they fish out in the deeper water this time of year and they catch quite a bit of fluke in the offshore boats. So this is a fluke. So if you look at the fluke, he has a jaw. A flounder would not have a jaw, right? The flounder, the meat when it cooks is definitely butterier, more buttery, and softer. As with a fluke, if you don't cook it correctly, it's definitely going to be a lot drier. But, you know, a good fluke would be 10, 12, 14 pounds. I've seen a 19-pound fluke. You would never ever see a 19-pound flounder. And then they handle them differently. Some guys, a lot for the Japanese market, will sushi bleed them. So when they actually catch the fish, they'll make a little indentation in the back of the tail, right? And then they'll make another little indentation here behind the head. And what they'll do is while the fish is still alive, they'll put it into a saltwater brine to bleed the meat. And the meat comes out a little bit whiter, you know. And then you can tell a lot by the coloring. Like, I could tell this is a fluke that was either out of Jersey or from Long Island because of the coloring of the white. If it was a more southern fish, there would be more red on the bottom, right? There would be much more red markings on the bottom white part of the fish. Okay. You know, they're both, and you catch them very differently. You know, a flounder, like, when we used to catch a lot of flounders, and they kind of disappeared, but they seem to be coming back. Part of the problem with the flounder fishery is the seal population. There's been a bit of an explosion of the population of seals, and what they do is they come into the back bay in the summertime. Between the seals and the striped bass, they eat all the juvenile flounder. Because the predatory system has been changed a little bit from obviously overfishing and, you know, some environmental issues, changing temperature of the water. So the flounder population is diminished in the last few years. And when we used to flounder fish, especially in the spring, we had the best technique. We'd find a spot where we wanted to go. We would put 2 anchors out. One guy would take an oar and walk around the boat and bang the bottom. And then we would take in a bucket. We would take mussels and canned corn, crush them up together, and the flounder are attracted to the yellow of the canned corn. So when you catch the flounders, you put them on the deck of the boat, you'd be spitting out the canned corn out of their mouth. So, and then in the fluke, we use a lot of artificial bait, and then we use like spearing and stuff like that. You know, this year, after Sandy, the fluke fishing was very good, but there was no bait around. Because in the springtime, the bait never showed up. So we had no spearing, we had no sand eels, we didn't have any you know, krill or anything, it was nothing. But the fish were there for whatever particular reason. So we fished predominantly with just like artificial stuff. Anyone know what a gulp is?
No.
Gulp is like...
A drink at 7-Eleven.
It's a little man-made worm that they put in this magical solution, whatever the solution is. And there's two colors. You can get chartreuse green or yellow. I like the chartreuse green. But you can get them in white. Some people like the white, but the chartreuse green works good for me. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, with this fish is very, very versatile. Mark has it on his menu right now. What are you doing with it on the menu, Mark?
We have it with a cabanata, which is a sweet and sour eggplant condiment from the island of Sicily.
So, you know, it is a very, very, very versatile fish. You could cut it into steaks, you could bake it, you could fry it, you could poach it in olive oil, cut a steak and you cook it on the bone. It's delicious poached in olive oil. You know, the best part of the fish is the little pellets around the outside, around where the fins are. These great little fat pellets that are delicious to eat, you know. So the first dish we're gonna do for you today is we'll do the fluke crudo, right? So
Why did you say on the boat you hitting with a stick? Like what was
we try and stir the bottom up to move the mud, because the flounders will bury themselves in the mud in the winter time and die. So we want to move the mud a little bit. So there's obviously a white side of the fish, and then there's a dark side of the fish. The dark side of the fish is better for raw. They're both really good, but the dark side is definitely better. But it's always easier to fillet the white side first. Because the dark side, the meat's going to be a little less fibrous, and it's going to be a little bit softer.
Is that because the white's on the bottom?
Now, the bottom part of the fish has a little bit more fiber. It has a little bit more muscle, sinew along the skin. I have I have 2 boats. So where I keep my boat is in a little, like a little canal, and this summer I did a lot of fluke fishing. When I would come back, there was a school of 7 swans living in my canal. And there was 2 that were really white, which was obviously the mother and the father. There was one that was a little juvenile, where his beak still didn't turn red. It still had black to it. And when they're young, their skin is, their feathering is like an off-brown color. And when I would pull up to tie up the boat, the mother would always come over and like take her beak and bang it on the side of the boat. Like, okay, I'm here. And somebody told me they're vegetarians, but I don't know. I mean, I give them the God's skin and everything, so I don't know. So, you know, what do you want to look in when you want to look at a fish? You know, I mean, obviously, this is what I do. So, you know, when you fish on the bone, is fish money in your pocket. You know, this time of year, the fish will start carrying some roe. Roe is very good to eat, especially on flounder. Flounder roe is excellent. So like if you look at the bottom here, right, on this side, you don't have a lot of that fiber, because if you look at it, it's still on the skin. So that's why the dark side is always a little bit better. But yeah, I've done a lot of research. I know, you know, about olive oil. I've tasted stuff from all over the world, from all different corners of the planet, and you know, you can taste when it's milled correctly or when it's produced correctly with the olives. I mean, when I was in Spain last time, you know, the technology that they're using right now is quite remarkable, where they test the olives, you know, for the ripeness, to see the fat content. But you know, the great thing about the Spanish olive oil is that it's of excellent quality and it's of an excellent price. And they're selling most of the olives that are being sold to Italy anyway.
It's true. It's true.
Right?
Italy is the #1 importer. Spain is the #1 exporter.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So,
It's a symbiotic relationship.
you know, I mean, I don't know how much maybe people spend time looking at olives. In Spain, it's like every inch of the country has got olive trees. It's unbelievable, especially in the center. So for the fluke, obviously we want to use a nice light style of oil. You want to use something that's Ligurian. Even some of the California stuff is really good for that.
Hey Chef, how many olive oils do you have in the kitchen generally? I know you have different ones.
I mean, I have, right now at the restaurant, I probably have, I don't know, 30, 40 different oils, about 90% Italian, a little bit of Spanish, and some California.
Do you do much ceviche with olive oil and
I do.
acid?
I do. I did a trip. The gentleman who buys my fish for me, we've been working together for 15 years, and he's Peruvian. So we took a trip about 5 years ago. We have a festival in Lima, if anybody ever has the opportunity, called Mistora, which is a festival that they said since the end of September. Awesome. They celebrate Peruvian culture based around food. So basically what I did there is I spent, I think I was there 7 days, 8 days, went around the country, took a look at what was going on in the way of food and ceviche and all that kind of stuff. And when I came back to the States, I kind of made my adaptation to what they do with with the addition of olive oil used in it. And it's amazing how, like, it just rounds it out so much more. You know, the one thing is that when you eat it in Peru, sometimes it's a little acidic, and it feels like it doesn't have enough fat content to it. And when you add the addition of olive oil to it, it really kind of changes the whole complexity of it. You know, it makes it a little fattier, a little creamier, a little bit more, you know, interesting. And you know, the great thing about it, you know, the great thing about cooking is, you know, so much of it's about experimentation. You know? So what we're going to do here, the first course you're going to have is going to be the fluke. And what we've done is we paired it with what the French call poussy pied, which is a bean that comes from the ocean. Right? It's kind of crunchy. Some people call them sea asparagus. Kind of briny, has an interesting flavor. Adds a little salt to a fish that's kind of a bit bland. You know, you put salt on the fish. And we use, for that preparation, we use lime juice because the radishes go really good. They bring a little spice to the dish. They go very good with it. And then we use an oil. You're going to have an oil from Liguria, right?
Yep.
Which is, you want to talk about the oil that you serve?
It's Ligurian oil made with the Tajasca olive, and they harvest later in that region. So as we've kind of gone over, these Ligurian oils, they harvest later, so they're very delicate and mellow and soft, and that olive gives you this ethereal flavor and texture, so it's very neutral, and it won't. Was it one more plate?
We're good.
So it's really delicate, ethereal, and neutral, and it won't overpower the delicacy of the fish or anything he puts with it, but it will elongate and kind of echo those flavors in the head, and subsumes and does not overwhelm anything else. And we actually are plating everything in the kitchen. It's coming out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and it's important, the process, like when we do this, it's important that the process is that the oil is last, right? We put all the other ingredients down, we go to citrus, and we put the salt, and we put the pepper, and then it's very important that the oil does go last, right? Because that's gonna be, you know, that's gonna be the coater, that's what's gonna make it, you know, into a finished realm. And I'm always generous with the oil because, you know, I want the people to move it around and I want them to get that flavor of the oil. It is part of the dish. You know, it's important that, you know, you eat the dish as it's supposed to be eaten. You know, as obnoxious it is, sometimes you go to a restaurant and they tell you how to eat it and you kind of look at them, right? But sometimes it is important that, you know, things are eaten in a certain manner.
Are there any, generally I hear about lighter oils type of fish, are there any very robust oils or fish?
Absolutely, there's many, you know. I mean, there's a lot of richer fish. You know, you can serve like, Tuscan oil, you can use, you have mackerel. Like the next fish we're gonna do is mackerel, which is, there's a bunch of different varieties. Today we're gonna use Spanish mackerel, which is a much creamier variety of mackerel, and it's not as full flavored. But you definitely want to use a more aggressive, assertive oil, maybe from a little cooler climate, maybe a little higher altitude, maybe a little bit further north.
What do you look for when you buy fresh mackerel? Like what's the first thing, the second thing, the third thing? I mean, what are the steps to buying an actual?
You know, I mean, there's a lot of misunderstanding about buying fish, you know, because when we buy fish, we never touch the fish.
Yeah.
We can look, we know, you know, and like I fish a lot, and you know, people say, you know, is it today's catch? The reality of it is that today's catch, if I went fishing this morning, that fish would eat so much better Friday. Believe it or not, right? The fish has a day to rest, right? Its muscles aren't so tensed up, especially on larger species of fish. You know, whether it's, you know, striped bass, swordfish, tuna, you know, whatever